Vassalos, thank you very much for the invitation to ReINFORM. I'm a PhD candidate in the University of Strasbourg on financial regulation, but I'm not going to talk about that today. I'm also active in the Greek solidarity movement in Brussels, where I spend more time than in Strasbourg. So I'm happy to be sitting here with two professors, and I'm also very happy to be with ReINFORM, that we share a common struggle in the last 4 years in solidarity with what is going on in Greece, with the movements fighting austerity in Greece. So I will try to reply to you cannot see anymore the banner of the event because we have just one computer, so I had my presentation in a computer, so I had some slides to show, so I will put it when I have to show a slide, and then I will put it off again. But I was trying to, I will try to reply in a way in the third question of the event, which was what is the relation between Greece and the participation of Greece in the EU and the economic crisis. And actually, I'd like to take it from the other way around. So what EU participation, what was the result for Greece, which I think can help to replying the question, is it really the fault of Greece that all this crisis happened? So I will base my presentation in a research that was commissioned by Corporate Europe Observatory, an NGO for which I used to work, to two Greek economists, George Labrinidis and Kostas Passas, that they did a research on the structure of the Greek economy and how it changed throughout the years of its participation in the EU. So, as you know, Greece joined the EU in 1981 in the second wave of enlargement of the European Economic Community back at this time, and the single market in '92 when it was created. This period, I think, is the background of the crisis that broke out in 2009. From 1950, right after the civil war ended in Greece, to 1973, Greece enjoyed 24 years of continuous growth, with an average growth rate of 7%. And inflation in this period was below 2.5%. So in this period, both Eastern and Western Europe were developing with very high growth rates, so that was also the case of Greece. Then the global crisis of '73 came. This is where inflation basically exploded in Greece. And actually the 7th year of the military dictatorship coincided with the end of stable growth in the country. Big private enterprises such as shipyards, refineries, cement industries, they found themselves in the board of bankruptcy. And what happened back then was that the state nationalized many of these enterprises in order to save them. So the method was not exactly the same as today. You wouldn't just give money to a private company. You would nationalize the company for a short period, and then you would sell it back to the private sector. So this happened already in the mid-70s. It started happening, and it continued in the 80s. This process was supported by the European Economic Community, but by the first form of cohesion funds, which were called the Mediterranean Integrated Programs, that started in 1985. And it was a bit the trade-off that the Greek capitalists were doing with the European Union. So in a way, the EEC was saving them because it provided funds to save these enterprises. But on the other hand, the objective of the common market have been set since '85. So all tariffs were going to be abolished. So they were going to operate in an open, competitive economy in the whole surface of the European Union. So in a way, it was an exchange of between financial support for Greek capitalism to abolition of protection of these enterprises. Okay, so I think I have to show you the first graph.
You can say one more word and then wait.
So
wait. You need to be in the screen. Yeah.
Okay. So that's the different sectors of the economy. It looks a bit different than what we're used to see, because these two economists are putting finance and state and services separately. Normally, like an orthodox economist, so to speak, they would put them in one category, and they also put things like transport and communications, they consider them industry. So this is how you get to have such a big industry indicator. But what you can see more or less is that since the entry, especially in the single market in '92, industry it drops a lot. The contribution of industry in the economy drops a lot. By the way, we're not using GDP here. We're using value added, which is a better measure for the contribution of different sectors. So we actually see that services increase after '92, such as finance, the state, but also trade increases, and agriculture and manufacturing are dropping in terms of input, but also in terms of employment. No, I put twice the input, but the picture on employment is quite the same. So we see after '92 the contribution of agriculture and manufacturing reducing radically. So that was because these sectors could not afford open competition, and traditional industries such as shoes, textile, but also shipyards. For example, shipyards were also subject to very specific quotas among different EU member states that were not favorable at all to Greece or Southern European states in general. And of course, after the adoption of the euro, the same trend continued of reduction of the input of manufacturing and agriculture. And more or less after the entry of the euro in the euro, since the sectors that could provide jobs and growth remained stable, one of the only ways that they were to not allow unemployment to explode was to hire more people in the public sector, which happened in a certain extent. Now, in a bit, this coincides with the end of the second wave of industrialization of the Greek economy, exactly the entry in the European Economic Community. The first wave was in the 20s, 30s, then that profited from the cheap labor coming from Minor Asia. The second was in the 50s and until the 70s, where actually there was social pacification, if you want. There was a lack of independent trade unionism from the state. Trade unionism was seen as being an act of adhering to Moscow. It was something that could be that was imagined as that could only be done by communists that were instruments of Moscow. So practically it was banned. So these were the two phases of industrialization, and actually this was an industrialization that had led to that was a half industrialization, if you want. There were half intermediary products produced by this in this country. There were refineries, there was aluminium exports, and there was, of course, a lot of exports of agricultural products. But the way that the paradigm changed with the entry in the single market and the European Union was to reduce this intermediate industry and actually become a logistical hub for the expansion of Western European and American corporations towards the Middle East and the former Soviet bloc. So actually transport would increase in importance in the economy, communications, yeah, so basically transport, communications, and then services in general, financial services and other services. And so this, let's say, paradigm, it was not joined with enthusiasm by everybody. It was a bit of, there were not, for instance, there were not rallies in favor of joining the European Union as there were in Ukraine